What happened to Monday? Here I am. It is the word. Have you not heard? That's what happened to Monday. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Let's take a moment to meditate, to sit at his feet, to hear his word. What do he have to tell us? I am that reporter reporting to you the way, the truth, and life. Because life be life, and as we go to and fro on this earth. So you just come on in, welcome, and think about some of the things that we need to do, have done. Guess what? We made it. We made it as we look throughout our life, look throughout the day from morning to this time. We have survived as we travel to and fro. So I'm glad you have this moment that you could set aside for yourself, set aside for God, set aside for your spirit within your God spirit within you to meditate on. That way you can level up. So here we are. I am that reporter once again, ready and willing to give you what you need as you go along your way and as you define what is true and what is not true, because this is the truth. And then that way you can have the life that you desire to level up. You can look within and say, okay, that's what I've been missing. That's what I've been missing. So here's the word. Today's topic. And first, I would definitely always would like to thank all the people who sow seeds within us to give us our topics or be one in the spirit, because the word says when two or three are gathered together, God will be in the midst. So as I conversate, and then chop it up with some of my co-workers, some of my friends, some of my loved ones, we get together and all kinds of things start to come up and come out. And they're like, yeah, we can help someone else with all this wisdom and knowledge and understanding that way, because sharing is caring. All right. So our topic today is about assessing overall preparedness. So as we go into this world, how prepared are we? In some ways, I feel like we are prepared, and then not nearly enough in others. Okay, we're gonna deal with the spirit, the spiritual. We're gonna deal with the global. We're gonna deal with socially, emotionally. All these things is part of who we are. All these things is part of our makeup in order to be prepared for whatever that comes our way. You must be equipped. You must be prepared, because you never know. But are you able to handle what it is? Are you equipped? Do you have your tools and your weapons? Remember, we talked about having the spiritual armor of God on, a helmet of salvation, what you stand on all 10, what you believe in, what is your mindset, solid on. Then you got the breastplate of righteousness, how you walk, what is the right thing that you would do, and what you believe, what is right versus what is wrong. And then you have that shield of faith as you step into different areas. Do you have the faith to go? Do you have that shield to walk in faith, to step out, without having that fear to, clench you or make you stand where, you feel unstable. You have your belt of truth. You know what is right. You got your feet that shod with peace as you go to and fro. You not about that noise, but if they come to you, what, you definitely would serve it. Okay. And of course, you got that sword, which is the spirit of God. It's that word that sword that comes from that mouth. When you speak the truth, when you speak the words, you solid on. You don't have to worry about, being unstable in or not knowing what you believe and what you speak on. Okay. So spiritually, are we prepared? As social or in the society, I feel like not really. As individuals, it depends on what kind of walk, because all our walks are different. We all walk the same path, but we may not be on the same level. You may be at the beginning, you may be in the middle, you may be further than I am, you may be almost there, to making it to your top level. And then that way you totally be empowered. So most of us know about God, but don't really actually kind of like know him. We know that there's a God, we know that we believe in him, but we really do not actually know him? Have we ever sat down and thought about who God is, what God is, and then be solid on that? I tell you all the time, God is a spirit. Before this world even began, it was the spiritual world. But the spiritual world, God had decided to make things for himself, and then by making things for himself, he wanted us to enjoy all the things that he made too. And because of the things that he made, we praise him, we thank him for being all who he is within us and for giving us. Not all the time that things may be gravy, but we on this side of the earth, we could be like on the bottom half of the earth, you know what I'm saying, 6 feet under, but we still have opportunity to get it right, all right, or to make a difference in our own life or in someone else's life. So even though his spirit is within all of us, that still don't mean that we serve him. Okay, it has to do with our discipline, our prayers, obedience. I feel like in those three areas, I think feel like we're a little weaker, than ever, because our ancestors they thought a little bit more stronger, but they were able to connect better, with the spirit of God. But because of disobedience, and as time went along, generation after generation, our power begins to become weak, and that's due to our ancestors being disobedient. They chose the way of the world than God, and he said, when you choose this, your people is going to go into slavery. So right now in culture, we are celebrating or acknowledging the fact that freedom came to the movement. And with that freedom, did they still take that choice to know that they're free and still go the right way? Sometimes still party like it was 1999. Some still parted other gods. And, as we see, we do it every year with Mardi Gras. Each float was named after a particular god that they serve, which they talk about in the word that, you serve gods of this land or your forefathers that serve different idols and gods that they worship that, did not make any of this, but they still worship and done that. And they did all kinds of, as we call hoodoo, voodoo, witchcraft. They, got in there and start doing soothsayings and sorceries to these different spirits of darkness instead of the spirit of God, which is light. So, but he said we all have a choice to choose. And so, because a lot of people who knew the right way, they either died off or they was murdered or killed, or we were separated, because that is what happened when our ancestors were put in chains. They were separated from their children, and their children was taken off to America or different areas in this world to become the slaved, because they did not want to yield to what was, God-like. So that's what happened to our ancestors. And so eventually, due to political eras, that, we became free. But some followed God and some did not. So this is the reason why some of this turmoil is happening. But this has been years, built on years, of disobedience that have been happening. So that's a little history. We'll just keep it up. Make sure to visit I'm gonna say the Rocks page or I Am Royalty. That's Russ. He lawn maintenance. He always on Facebook. He always quote like a Black historic fact. So if you're looking for something that your ancestors have done in Black history, since it's Black History Month, always visit his page on Facebook to understand and know some type of Black fact or African American history that was, that our ancestors had done, but they did not get credit at that particular time because they weren't considered as people, and they was, other people who owned them got that patent or got that credit because they weren't allowed to. So that's another thing, because this is about being prepared. So I just had to give you a little history there and a shout out to I Am Royalty, which is Brandon Russ. So please follow him for your little facts of African American history. And I think you really would be enlightened, because I didn't know a lot of, people of color had created such things. It's just so amazing, to know that we all had a hand. And then also, like, one of the movies that they had with Taraji and I can't think of her first name, but Washington was her last name, and they did a great job with acting out. Those characters had something to do with math, dealing with the moon. Y'all will come up with the movie sooner or later, but you know what I'm talking about. So it's just all kinds of things that move, that goes out, but they can't really get the full story. So sometimes you have to do your own research. And I tell y'all that about this channel too. You have to do your research when I give you information, and that way you'll know that this is the truth and this is the way. Okay. So spiritual, are we prepared spiritually? So we are easily to get distracted. I just went sideways, but there was some good stuff that I gave you. So, so with that, we are easily to get distracted by entertainment, sometimes anxiety, and then just being busy. With just busyness. We are so busy. Our life is so in order of all kinds of things that we have to complete. And sorry for running a little late, because I had things that I had to complete that I just let time get me by. And that's a natural thing for us. But we have to wind that in and do better. All right. And look, you're not alone. Look at me. Okay. I'm here to show you that, just keep pressing. It shall get better. How do we prepare ourselves? We need to learn how to wake up, be woke. Don't let everything that's going on pass you by. Get some understanding. Sometimes you hear quotes and different things, but it's always underlining. I mean, I got to give it to President Trump when he talked about fake news. Yes, all the news, or majority of the news, maybe you got one or two that is true, but some of the news is really the government. They pay certain people to make movies. They pay certain things to certain news reporters to report certain news, because they know that if we get in your mind and we tell you repetitiously, you're going to believe it. You're going to like, oh yeah, and you'll link onto it. And now there's persuasion. Your mind have been persuaded in a particular way, instead of you really digging in there to know the truth. So how do we prepare ourselves? You must wake up. Wake up. Even in Proverbs, they talk about wake up, oh sleeper. Sometimes we sleep, we be lazy, and we don't want to wake up to be aware. Okay, it's about being aware. We must learn how to study the scriptures, not as a Bible story, but as to pull those nuggets, those words, those quotes in there that we could use to speak on our tongue, to speak the word, in order to make them have power within us. Okay, so look for those nuggets that you could speak, those quotes. I am, God is, I rebuke you. Those things you can use in order to help your spirit and your power within your armor to go forth and for protection. So we must learn how to seek the truth. Here we are part of the truth. I am the truth. I speak the truth. This channel is the truth. Here we are. We're going to show you the way, the truth, and the life. Okay. I am not the truth, but God is the truth. But I want to speak his truth to give you the truth in order that you may have and know solid what it is. Okay. And you must learn how to seek for yourself too. So it's about developing a real relationship around God's spirit and his word to abide in or within our body. That has to be part of you. So whenever you feeling weak or down, whatever, that the Holy Spirit will bring to your remembrance, and that word will come out, or the word will come to your mind. But if you don't read and study to put anything in, guess what? When your time of weakness comes, it's nothing gonna come out. And I'd have been at a point like, I was weak, and I thought about it like the next day, the next 2 days, like, man, it's too late. But, it did come. But that goes to show that, I have not been solid in my studying or solid in my, daily reading. That way, when my back is against the wall and I'm pressured, the Holy Spirit have to be available. It has to be within me in order to bring to my remembrance. I have to study the word in order for to make the Holy Spirit react. All that is one. We want to say it's separate, but God is a spirit, and his word, he spoke his word. It's still God. We just want to separate up to different people. No, it's all in one. You have to make them work all in one in order to make it manifest. So, what about globally? Are we prepared globally? So I'm going to say partially. We're partially prepared. And that's because of technology, communication, rapid information, medical advances, disaster response. So we're not really all the way prepared globally. We do have some knowledge, but it's like a delay. It's like a delay. We might not be techie savvy or learning how to communicate, you know, globally all around. We do have friends in other countries and other places, but we need to but the information may not be rapid. It may be a delay in the information. Medical advances, it might be advanced over there, but it might not be over here. Same thing would happen to Juneteenth. They understood that they was free up there long before it had came down to the South. It was a delay. So that's what I was saying. Are we prepared globally, just to be, stable, in our instability? Are we prepared globally? Okay, so we're not prepared for economic shocks. Are we? What about cyber bullying, cyber security threats? All the time on our phone, we always get all kinds of cyber security because globally, I guess one government sells our information. When we go into these apps and different things, we have to put all our information in. And so sometimes those apps sells that information to another person so they can get business by sending you ads and sending you. That's how all that works. Then sometimes those cyber securities would get in there and threaten. Next thing you know, you've been hacked. And so that's how that goes. So sometimes you have to look at, going to the sites, make sure you or different apps, make sure you be very careful, okay? And kind of get a better understanding. Rapid moral and cultural shifts. We have that all the time. Morally is about how you are. And then culture, what are kind of shifts? 1 minute, we celebrating this week, we celebrating, do it for the culture. You know what I'm saying? Do it for the culture. But next week, or in May, we was like, Cinco de Mayo, you know what I'm saying? We keep going into all these different cultures without understanding what it all about. So why are we selling? I asked a couple of people, that was not of that particular culture. Why are you celebrating Cinco de Mayo? They could not tell me nothing. They couldn't tell me nothing. They just said, oh no, we just gonna drink. That's all we know. But is that, you follow somebody behind somebody without wisdom and knowledge. So this is what we're talking about overall preparedness in your mind of what you are, or are you just being led around? You just following whatever people say, or whatever people do, you just going along with it without wisdom and knowledge. Okay, so you got to understand. Look at Thanksgiving. We celebrate all my life Thanksgiving. We're not understanding like actually what happened, between the Indians and the people who came over. What's that? Not a slaughter? That was a turkey time. But we don't look at it like that. We say we give thanks anyway, not understanding that lives was lost. So understand about the global conflict shifts. We see that throughout the world. Over here, they say there's wars and rumors of wars. They have conflict shifts. We don't know whether we are endangered or not because we over there dipping in somebody else's business that had nothing to do with us. But if we can just get or steal or take whatever they have while they over there, not paying attention. All right, okay. What? Or are we over there trying to help for what? So we can, do some trading? what is really going on? What is the shift that we have? One minute we enemies, next minute we friends. What is really going on? All right. We are advanced better than the past decades, but we still are fragile when it comes not only to our spiritual, globally, we're like that. Are we together as one as a people on this particular section of the earth? We are together, but we still fragile. We're not really together. We are divided, even within our own culture, within our own, outside our culture. It's just like, what are we really doing? What do we stand for? Who are we? Different shades for different, types of people. So there's different rules, but we all consider according to the economy, according to the world, is this particular culture, this particular people, and regardless of what shades it is. But we put differences between each other. So we need to, come up with a better definement of what we want to do. So socially and emotionally, are we prepared for what's coming? Socially and emotionally, I feel like not really. Okay, not really. I feel like we're not compared. People are more connected digitally, but more isolated emotionally. So, at first we used to talk to each other on the phone, this and that. We don't talk to nobody on the phone hardly. It's always through a text or, between different apps, sharing different platforms. We might, communicate then, but we still like isolated. We don't come together like we like Big Mama, you know, family stuff. We don't come together like that. So we are connected digitally, virtually, but more isolated emotionally when it comes to, that closeness. So mental health is struggling. That struggle is on a rise. It's all about a mental health, but some things we got to look within. Some things has been passed on, from, just our parents going through something, and then we have, different types of abuse that happens to us as we go through life, and we have to deal and, and try to suppress that down. So that has to do with mental health, and then just, different people coming together and creating life, and that life may be mixed up, and they have to deal with different sides, different types of, culture or beliefs or people that lives differently, and that cause trauma too. So we feel like the families and the communities are weaker, which we used to have communities used to come together and do things together. Now you very seldom see that. All right. So people who react but don't reflect. Sometimes a lot of people nowadays, and as you see on different platforms, how people just react to stuff. Next thing you know, someone done lost a life, and they really don't reflect on some of the actions and things that they do or the things that they say that will cause. For every action, there is a reaction. So we are equipped with tools, but not with wisdom. We have tools, but we don't have the wisdom to know how to use them. Sometimes we'll get knowledge on certain things, but we don't fully get knowledge and be aware of what it is. So we are prepared, technology wise, but not spiritually, materially, but not mentally, externally, but not internally. But the internal part is really what matters. So once you solid within yourself, that is, the first game. That's the first game piece right there. If you solid within yourself, then you're more stable and calm in order to move better elsewhere without being frantic or without someone, shaking you up and making you feel unstable. So the question that we were talking about when this subject came up is, are we brainwashed? I'm going to say yes, but not in like a dramatic conspiracy movie type way people imagine. Our brainwash is more so like in a quiet, everyday ways that shape how we think, react, and believe without noticing. Not controlled, but conditioned. And that is like we're brainwashed by repetition. So sometimes we hear the news, we hear different things, different ads. Whatever we hear over and over starts to feel like truth. It just seeps in there, and next thing you know, okay, that's part of us. Even a song that we don't even like, we start singing like, man, I hate that song. But because you hear it every 4 hours, next thing you know, we start picking up bits and pieces of it, and now it's in us. All right. So we hear over and over, it starts to feel true, even if it isn't. That's repetitious, and that's one way that we're getting brainwashed. All right. News cycles, social medias, different trends, viral opinions, celebrity takes. And I want to mention about that because on my way to work, I remember one of the celebrities, and it was a lady. She was saying that in the in the media, they put her out that she be booting up with baby mama. And in another interview, they were saying like, wait, you were saying that all your kids, but your kids, you don't have kids, or you just had a child. But what about you were saying all these other kids, they graduating or something was going on, and she included them as her kids. And then she like, well, we all a big family. The media would paint us that we against each other, but if I like him, I got to take his package too. All these is his little packages. So in order for it's all about the child. So therefore, I got to be on one accord with the mother because, they didn't get along, but I'm still with, her leftovers. I'm just gonna say that, still with her leftovers, and so therefore, now her leftovers got offsprings. So we got to be on one accord. So it's not me being against her. We got to get along for the kids. And so she was saying, I don't have no problem. They all come over. We all have a good time. It ain't all about that. But the media and they like, well, why don't you ever correct that? She like, why? No matter what you try to tell media or tell the truth about what's going on, people don't want to hear that. They like itching ears. They want to hear all kinds of mess. So she said, I don't even try. My closer friends know what's going on, and that's all that matters. I don't even try. People, celebrities, they like, news or, media, they love news, hot topics. So that's how they make their money. She said, I don't even worry about that. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's a celebrity take, so it's things like that. And so we be thinking that these people's lives and sometimes it be about money. The more that we sow into these algorithms, people make money off of that, gossip and news, people fighting. We always going to go to that because that's things that entertains us. So political talk points, okay, we all into that. Even church cliches, the church has been turned out already. It's just like, wow, the church done got a bad name. So repetition creates familiarity. It feels like truth. All right. So the other thing that we feel like that we have not been prepared for or being brainwashed, I should say, is algorithms, not in a sci-fi sense, but in a psychological one. So algorithms feeds us. It keeps us scrolling on different topics. It deals with our triggers, what triggers us, and what confirms what our beliefs are. Next thing you know, you look up something. Next thing you got ads. Y'all notice that? You got ads and stuff on things that you done clicked on, things that you done took interest in. Next thing you know, you're going to see it all the time. All right. So it's like it confirms our beliefs. What keeps us emotionally hooked, and it does all that to us. And now, next thing you know, we have time that's being wasted, which we could have used that time wisely somewhere else. Almost got caught up in that. Oh. So we are not to see the world we are seeing. Okay, we're not seeing the world that we are seeing in pretty much with these algorithms. They showing us the world that we want to see, but we're not really seeing the world for what it's, for what we need to see it. Everything is like customized in a bubble. Whenever you scrolling or whatever, your page or whatever you do, it's tailored for you. Whatever you click on and you like, it picks it up, and it's tailor-made and customized for you in your little bubble that shapes our worldview more than we realize. All right. So what about our culture? It teaches us what to value, what to fear, what to desire, what to chase, what to avoid. We don't question, we just like absorb it. We absorb. That's the culture now. This is what we absorb. All right. So a lot of times, even our own culture, we don't, you know, find out things or even search out what our culture even is, what they even stand for. We just doing things just to do it. We don't understand nothing. We just doing things without knowledge. All right. Or wisdom and understanding. So spiritually, do not be conformed to this world. Spiritually, that's what the word says. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The world will try to mold us. It's actively, we must understand how to resist it. Okay. So sometimes if you know that at this time you want to spend more time reading instead of next thing you know, you scrolling, okay, 5 o'clock, I cut it off. I'm not doing that anymore. Let's focus on me doing more reading or doing more meditating. And you just take that time to set aside to do more instead of just coming home. Next thing you know, I'm telling you, that scrolling would get you. You spend hours and hours time wasted, which you could be doing something valuable for yourself to level yourself up. So the real danger isn't, I don't think, just us being brainwashed. It's the unawareness. We unaware that we being brainwashed because it's just conditioned. It's so subtle. And next thing you know, this is who we are without understanding who we are. We want to do something better, but next thing you know, we become a couch potato because next thing you know, all we want to do is just scroll, watch different platforms, and we just spend all our time there watching them elevate, but we don't ever sow seed within ourselves that way we can elevate. Okay, so the most powerful influence is not the one we don't notice, it's the absorbing of ideas without realizing it. So we must understand how to develop our own self. Take that moment and that time to meditate on ourselves and things that we want to do in life and what we want to be. So we understand the media, culture, the fear, trends, trauma, politics. We entered that like the entertainment, the group thinkers. We very seldom we shape our own selves through our own reflection, through scripture, discipline, wisdom, silence. Just being silent at times. That's like a meditation, prayer, or even just critical thinking. Like, okay, I heard this, but let me go try to define that. You know what I'm saying? Critical thinking. So most of us hear noise, but few of us hear the truth. So majority of the time, before you want to, and The Rock said this too on his platform, I Am Royalty, or Russ Maintenance, Lawn Maintenance. He said that, a lot of people want to hear, things that all the noise. Nobody want to listen to the truth about here. He putting out facts, about our ancestors and things and people who done paved the way for us to come forth. And we don't even want to click like or subscribe to get that wisdom and knowledge and understanding, that we could do that too. But instead we want to do everything that's funny, joke to make us laugh, stuff like that. So that's something about most of us want to hear the noise, but few of us want to hear the truth. So I just want to put that out there. So if we feel like life has become work, pay bills, repeat, you're not imagining it. That's how it feel all the time. A lot of us may feel trapped in it, and not because we are lazy or unmotivated, but because the system is designed that way. So we must, the work to pay bills cycle is a form of conditioning. We feel like we can't get out of that. We stay stuck within that. And that's how we are taught: work, survival, rest, laziness, ambition, more work, success, more bills. It's stuff like that. So we don't question the system because they're too busy surviving inside it. We too busy surviving inside it, so we don't question it. We just go with the flow. We're so exhausted and tired, so we just like come back home, lay down to rest, and do it all back over again. So we don't work to live. We work to avoid falling behind. And I'm like that too, baby. They say we're going hard. I need my hours. I'm staying at work. You know what I'm saying? So rent rising, faster than wages, groceries rising faster than wages, utilities, medical costs. It's just so, even so, it's just, we have to work hard. And that's what type of cycle that we're in. But God, our Father, the creator of heaven and earth, he never designed humans to grind endlessly like this, or be stressed constantly, or live paycheck to paycheck. We feel trapped by debt, measure work by productivity. It's just crazy. So the real problem isn't really work. Work is good, because he said we should work by the sweat of our brow. You know what I'm saying? So, but the purpose is good. Responsibility is good when bills consume our paycheck. That's not good. And stress consumes our mind. Time consumes our life. We're not living. We're maintaining. That's why so many people feel numb. They feel tired or disconnected. And this is how we've been going. But sometimes in life, you got to understand your skills, your certifications when it comes. And then you got to learn how to plan the work and then work the plan. If you feel like, look, I want to take a vacation, you need to look decide where you want to go. Then look and map yourself out and start setting aside, because you wouldn't know how much money that we probably even waste half of the time, that we could been traveling somewhere, doing some things, and enjoying it. And once we see that we're free to do that, the next thing, oh, wait, let's plan another one. Sometimes you can get with a group of friends, group family, and you just enjoy life. You know what I'm saying? It is possible. So whenever you just feel like you just stuck in that square block, it is possible. So what about your skills and certifications? We do side incomes, entrepreneurship, digital work. They have digital work, trades, remote opportunities that you can kind of look at and see if you got skills in it. Reduce dependency by lowering expenses. If you start getting all these bills or whatever, are they necessary, or are you just made bills? So you got to understand how to lower them. Eliminating debt, bill savings, own instead of renting, learning financial literacy. A lot of stuff we be signing our name, but we don't even understand the literacy of financial, of finances. So we have to learn how to rebuild our identity by spiritual understanding. Our purpose, calling, gifts, peace, relationships with God, our spirit. That's one thing, that's a foundation you need to go. You got to go inside in order to deal with the outside. This would shift our identity and decisions. It would take away, our takeaway is, what are we not powerless in awareness? Is that the first step in our strategy? Our takeaway is we are not powerless. In our awareness is the first step. You got to understand that the strategy is the second step. Come up with a strategy. And the purpose is the third step. Same thing. Like if you say, okay, I want to go to New York, what does it take? Start doing your strategies. You're not powerless. Start being aware, your awareness. Start setting aside, even if it may take you a year or whatever, or 6 months, you are able to do that. But you got to apply yourself. You got to apply yourself, and you have to have a discipline about it. All right. The purpose is the third step. So don't feel trapped, but the cycle, or, you questioning why, we may not be smarter than a fifth grader or be the brightest crayon in the box, but we are unique and we are wonderfully made. You must understand that. Okay. Well, this is all that we have for today. I hope some things that we just said there to enlighten you and help you along your way as you go to and fro on this earth. Always come back here to Monday. What happened to Monday is the word. Have you not heard? Our Monday talk will continue to be prepare us to look at in case of emergency, in case of being some type of evacuation, or some type of emergency preparedness that we need. What are the main things that we need to have in place? So that's our topic that's going to be for next Monday. So make sure you stay tuned and meet me right back here every Monday at 6 p.m. Blessings and peace and love it to you. I hope all will be well until we meet again. Blessings. Have a good one.